RDS. So this is the console, the main screen for RDS. As you could see on the top, you are asking for Aurora Create Database, right? This is for Aurora, not for the regular RDS. Then you have a Create Database in the bottom, which talks about creating RDS databases, right? Not only that, you also see how many database instances, how many resources you created, and you'll be seeing that. And you can see there are some limitations given here, right? 0 of 20, you can have 20 DB instances, you can have 40 clusters, you can take 100 snapshots, you can have 20 event subscription, right? There are certain limits over this in the service to start using that, but you'll see this all 0 means that I don't have anything up and running currently. So I'm in my region, Mumbai, AP South 1. You can go back and see, this is my region AP South 1. This is my region where I'm hosting all the services. All right. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a database. So two options that you see, restore from S3, you remember the snapshot, probably this is the one. So just leave this one across. Let's go and click on create database. Okay, let's quickly look at the options what we have in this one. What is EC create? You see EC create, right? So when you do a EC create, they will choose the best recommended approach and configuration for your need, and you can just use it in a couple of clicks. You don't have to really worry about what is my going to be my configuration as such. We'll do that later, but we'll use something called standard create this time. Okay, we'll be using this option where you need to specify a lot of configuration, including availability, security, backup, and your maintenance window, everything that you are supposed to provide the detail here in standard create. So since we need to know all these options, I will recommend you to go and create a standard. Look at this below one, the engine options. This ideally your database engine options, right? I'm not coming back to Aurora yet. We're just not there yet. Okay. So ignore that. So as I said, it supports MySQL, MariaDB, Oracle, Postgres, and Microsoft SQL Server. So you should be aware, a couple of them are open source, like MySQL and things, and Oracle SQL servers are, license cost, right? It's going to cost you extra to host them. So you need to be aware of the services like which are like open source free and which of the services are going to cost me more, because Oracle and SQL Server includes a lot of licensing costs as well. So the amount of time that you use these services, that also includes your licensing costs. So obviously Oracle and SQL Server will be much higher than your other databases. Okay, let's come and do this one. Click on standard, then come and click on MySQL. You can create all of this, I don't mind, but for this demo, I'll be using a MySQL database to display that here. So I have a MySQL database created. So I come over here. As you could see, it allows me to choose a different option, right? I have so many database options when the version of database is by default. So different versions, right? So the version which I choose is 23. You can choose even 25 also, the latest version, it doesn't matter, right? You can just choose the version that you want to use it. I'm choosing this 23 version, right? And then I have to choose a template. What is the template given here? There are three things, right? Production. So production is going to be really costly with a lot of options, right? So you'll have a high availability and consistent performance because the machines are of really good type. Then you can have a dev and test instances, which is not a production load. Obviously, they are going to be a little bit lesser than the production cost. The third option, what you see is what we are going to use today, which is free tier. Click on this one. Excuse me for a second. So we have selected free tier option, right? The free tier allows you to create a very simple instance, which will be free for first 12 months in your account so that you don't have to pay anything for that. Okay. So I'm choosing a free tier account. I'm creating my database, right? I can give you a database. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename the database. I'm going to rename this as DemoDB. Okay. I'm renaming as DemoDB. Then you have to give your credential settings, right? Credential is nothing but your database username and password. First is the master username. Username is admin. I can choose automatically generated passwords, but I can also choose my own. Normally I go and choose my own to ensure that I always use this and I can easily remember. Okay. Go and create your own password for admin user. Okay. So Stan, the next important thing what you do is database instance class. What is this? You remember the EC2 instance types? Go to aws.amazon.com/ec2/instance types. Right? In the previous classes, we have seen it. So we have like in general purpose, compute optimized, memory optimized, accelerated computing, storage optimized instances meant for different things. Right? So when you got high performing loads will normally used with the compute optimized, and this need a lot of storage options here. You'll start using this storage optimized instance types where all the data will be stored using NVM. NVM stands for non-volatile memory express solid state drives. This is one level advanced than your SSD drives, much faster, provides you the low latency. Okay. So similarly, if I come back to my RDS, here I can choose what type of database instance class that I'm going to choose. As you could see, this is DB-T2 micro instance. Right? As you could see, there's no other option. All the options are disabled for me. Why it is disabled? Remember, password is wrong. Let me just say. You have chosen a free tier. The free tier have limitations, right? That's why you're not able to see the other options over here. But in the moment you switch to production templates, from free tier to production template, I'm switching back, then I can see there's a lot more option here. Say standard classes, a regular class, which I've seen, right? Includes this M classes and memory optimized classes like R and X, or bustable classes, include those T. Right? So obviously you can go back and choose from multiple options that you are getting here. So if you see this, each of the machine will have the number of virtual CPUs, virtual cores equivalent to your number of threads you can run at a time, and your GB bytes in RAM, right? The memory 32 GB bytes, 8 and 16 GB bytes, and etc. Right? So each of the instance types will have a different configuration that you can choose from. I'm going to stick to our free tier for the demonstration. Then I will come and choose my storage types, right? I just talked about storage types. You can have a magnetic tapes and you have a provision IOPS and generic purpose, right? We'll use the generic purpose this one. And by default, the minimum database size you have to give is at 20 GB, right? You need to know. I can't go less than that. Right? If I give less than that, you'll have a issue because it says minimum 20 GB bytes, maximum 16,384 GB bytes. Okay, so I'm choosing my storage type. I'm keeping it as general purpose SST here. Then I'm allotting 20 GB, more than enough for my demonstration today. Then I can enable or disable auto scaling. Remember, anytime the auto scaling is enabled means that it goes near to the 20 GB limit, right? So it just increases it. And I can maximum go for 1000 GB bytes of storage. So I'm limiting it. There's a maximal threshold. I'm setting it up for the auto scaling. Right? This is my storage section. You remember what we have done? We have chosen our machine through instance class. Then we created the admin user and password. Then we choose our storage options. The next one is availability and durability. Remember, availability always comes in place where you keep your primary instance and secondary and standby instance in another availability zone, so that in case of a disaster in one availability zone, your database can automatically switch you over to the standby instance, which will still be working because that is in the other availability zone. And this is disabled. Why? Because again, same problem. Choose a production template here. And you come back and decide on your multi-availability zone deployment. You can also choose that I don't want a standby instance. I'm good with one instance. You can say that over there as well. Okay. But I'll prefer to use it whenever we go for a production. Switching back to free tier, I'm skipping that as well. Then connectivity. Obviously, these are supposed to be accessible within the virtual private cloud. What is VPC? Virtual private cloud, an isolated cloud network given to you by AWS, right? And obviously, you want this database services to be placed within that, right? So then you got to choose your VPC, and you have to choose something called a subnet group. Okay, so you choose your VPC and you choose your subnet group, right? And you decide if this database is accessible publicly to everyone or it is accessible privately within the VPC. Normally, it is not recommended to keep your databases accessible outside your VPC. If you need that, then you have to use a way of jump server and use a secure SSH tunnel to query your databases. But since it's demo, I'm just choosing the option public access equal to yes. I'm proceeding further. Existing security groups, right? As I said, if you are adding more and more security groups, what are the security groups here? Your virtual firewalls. The security groups are nothing but your firewalls, right? Let's recap. What is security group? So imagine that you have a database, right? You're placing a virtual firewall. That's your security groups, right? So there's a lot of requests coming in from different sources. We'll not be allowing everything. Maybe we'll be just allowing one few of to reach. We'll be denying this request, right? So you have to allow and deny permission to different ports and from different sources. That's your virtual firewall, right? You have to choose your security groups to do that. So security group is part of a VPC. We'll be discussing that as separately, right? All right. Now I have chosen my public access subnet group. I can also choose my availability zone. There are two availability zones. Where you want to place this, you can choose, but I will just give no preference. I will let AWS to decide where to host it. Why? Because like I don't really care. As long as it's in any availability zone, it's going to work fine. So I'm not really choosing and doing like which availability zone I want AWS to create this one. All right, let's go to the next section. So here, this is the network section. What have we seen? It's the network section. You choose your VPC, security group, public access, and others. And the last one, you decide how your database want to be authenticated. Okay, so I'm choosing a password authentication, and you can also choose something called a password and IAM, right? You remember IAM users, and they can also automatically access your database through IAM authentication. There's a third type, Kerberos application. I'm going to leave this an option right now. We are not going to use it. So let's use password authentication only. I don't want any IAM username password here. Then you can go for additional configuration. Very important, right? Because you know this is a managed database. Doesn't mean that you can't add anything additional. So as I said, you can create your initial database name. My initial database name is going to be demo, DB1, for example. So I'm getting something called default parameter group, right? So every database should have a default parameters. You remember the case sensitive, insensitive, and the blockers and a lot of other options has to be specified. AWS provides that by default parameter group. You can also create your own database parameter group. We'll come back and see how to create a different parameter group. But for this one, let's choose the default one as it is. Okay. And here I'm specifying enable automated backups. As I said, default period is 7 days. You can go up to 35 days. That's what we discussed while doing the presentation. Right, let's go back and say, choose your parameter group. Okay. So next, you decide how long you want to keep this automated backup, 7 days or 35 days. You can choose any date time between. All right. Then you can choose your backup windows. You don't have any preference. AWS will do on their own time. But if you want to have very specific time that you know that people won't be using it, then you can schedule you on a particular time. But here, I don't have any preference, so I'm keeping that. So this option is very important. So if you see something going wrong, you can enable something called an enhanced monitoring, where there will be a lot of your logs, monitoring logs will be shipped to CloudWatch, and you'll get additional metrics to understand what is wrong with your system. By default, don't enable it; it's not required. But in case something goes wrong, you really want to see how it is performing. What are the different metrics that you can see? Then you choose the enhanced monitoring. Is that clear? All right. Remember the log exports, right? So you can publish all the logs to CloudWatch. So whatever you want to export, you choose from your audit log, error log. Probably you might just want to choose only the error logs, nothing else. Okay. So obviously you have other option to choose whether you can do for a maintenance or what is your monthly cost, right? So it says that free tier database available for 12 months. For the first 12 months, we'll get 750 hours in RDS. After that, it will start charging, right? So obviously, if you are using a free tier account, obviously it's free. So just go ahead and create your database. Before creating a database, let's quickly come and review one more time on last time, right? So you choose a template, you choose your engine, right? Then you come all the way, then your DB instance class, the machine type, your storage options, availability and durability, multi-availability zone setup or a single instance setup. You choose it over here. Then you decide your connectivity uh, through your VPCs, subnets, and security groups. Okay. And then you provide your additional configuration like a parameter group, your initial database name and everything else. Go ahead and create your database. You're done, almost configured. So as you could see, the databases started coming up in my RDS databases list. And I can also see this is a T2 micro, the same one which creating and the status of creating. It's going to take a few minutes, but meanwhile, we'll just jump back to the other section and come back and see if it has been properly completed. So let it take. Meanwhile, just look at the different options given here in RDS. Snapshot, we know what is a snapshot. It's a manual backup that you can take. And this is automated backups which the system is taking, right? Then you have like something like a parameter groups, which just came into that, right? Any databases needs a parameter group. We'll just go back and see that as well. Right? When the database is getting created, I'll take you through what is this parameter group is all about. So you see by default, there are three parameter groups, right? One's for MySQL, and you can see a deep cluster parameter group for Aurora and another parameter group for Aurora again. So let's talk about this MySQL 8.0. Just click on this. Look at this names, right? Auto commit enabled or disabled. Says true. And a couple of other things, right? So backlogs, right? Number of outstanding connection requests by Mixel can have, right? And then choose an auto increment offset and offset. These are the database parameters, right? Within this MySQL or SQL Server, when you are creating databases, you need to give all this option, right? So by default, you can create a parameter group and you can reutilize them. You can also edit the parameters from here. Not only that, look at this, there are 27 pages, right? It's not one or two, right? There's 27 pages, what you see. There's so many things over here. You can choose to edit the parameters and save that as a file. You can change, you can override any of this one. Okay. I'm canceling that, I'm not going to do that. Rather, I'll show you how to create your own parameter group. This is a default parameter group coming in there. So let me create my own parameter group for MySQL. What I'm doing, I'm going to the parameter group, clicking on create parameter group, which brings me to this page. Okay. So in the parameter group, create parameter group page, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my database type, right? The database what I have is MySQL, but you can also see MariaDB, Aurora, Oracle, Postgres, and SQL Server Express and SQL Server. Everything is there given over there. But let's choose MySQL 8.0. That's my database, right? I'm going to create a group name. So demo group. Right. I'm just going to create a parameter group. The only option that you have to choose here is your database version because all the default parameters will be listed there by default. You don't have to add anything over there. I'll go back and click on create. Now you could see a new parameter group with the name demo parameter group has been created. So this parameter group have all the options what you've seen earlier, and you can even go back and edit those parameters if you want to reset something. You can always do that. Okay. So when you're creating a database, right, you choose a default parameter group while doing that, and you can also change it after you create a databases, right? So parameter groups are used to give you default values input while creating the database, and that varies from database to database. All right. Now I could see the database is getting created. Just go back and see if that is done. If not, we'll come back and work with the snapshot before going back. I'm clicking on that, the database is getting created. So it's just packing up. Only the backups is running. So just few minutes they need to be ready for us to start using it. And you can see I have not really chosen any preference for availability zones. By default, it has created in 1B. I'm okay with it. And here it shows your connectivity details. Very important to see and understand your database name, right? Your system name is this is your endpoint. So this is what you have to use in your connection strings. DemoDB, and this is the server AP South1 RDS.AWS.com. This is your server name, which you need to use in your connection strings. But not only that, then you can also see a port 3306 is a MySQL port. For each service, we'll have a different port connection to connect. And you can also see the default VPC and your subnet group and your subnets, right? And your security groups also. So these are the security groups associated to this particular one. Okay. And if you're not able to connect your RDS instance after creating, most of the time, this particular inbound, right? This is the inbound, right? This inbound security group does not have a rule to allow your system to go and operate. So how do I see? Just right click on the security group, which is like inbound, right? Right click, open a new tab. Okay. So here, you go back and see this is my security group, and you know what inbound and outbound rules, right? The inbound role will allow what are the options to connect to your database. So you have to edit your inbound rule. If you want everyone to access added traffic, MySQL. From your inbound rule, choose a MySQL. That's your port 1433 and TCP connection from anywhere. 0000 is anywhere, right? Anyone can access it. Click on Save Rules. So what I've done, I've added a rule so anyone can connect through this particular database. Similarly, you can restrict to a certain IP ranges. All right. So what you have done, you created a security group, and security group you added an inbound rule so that connection can be accepted in your audience instance. So what happens if net? So what I have allowed that now I am able to access. I created security groups and everything is red. Still I'm not able to access. Then you got to check your system or where you are trying to plan to connect to that database. Right. As you could see, this is not a, multi-availability zone database instance. This is a free tier template, so we did not add any standby instances, right? If you add a standby instances, this replication will display the different replication status. Right, we are there now. So we just created a database, it just saved, successful, right? So how do I connect? You see this option query editor on the left. The query editor allows you to log into your databases from the console, right? As you could see, this query editor supports only Aurora database. But if you use Aurora database, you can create your own databases and then you'll be able to use in query editor. For others, like RDS instances, so here this is the RDS instances, you can use any third-party client tool. So my suggestion would be to use dweaver, dweaver.io. Okay, so this is universal database tool, which is good, which is compatible with MySQL, Redshift, SQL Server, and many of the databases. And you can use this one. This is a community tool that if it is permitted in your organization or if you are a individual user for learning, I suggest you can go back and use, and they support most of the popular databases. Okay. Right. Coming back to our RDS instance, what we just created. How do I monitor them? So the question comes in, how do I go and monitor them? So just simple. You have your CloudWatch monitoring enabled. Just click on the monitoring here. See, by default, these are the metrics enabled. Your CPU utilization, how much CPU is utilized per hour, is it really high or low, right? And the number of database connection that's been made at a time, right? And how much free database storage is available. And what is the memory? And IOPS is input. IOPS is nothing but input output per second. Your input and output per second. You can see how many data has been read, how many has been written to the database. You can show these are the very basic metrics that you might want to monitor. So whenever this CPU utilization goes above 90%, right? Then obviously something wrong with your database. You can create alarms, then you can take a action on top of it. So how do I create this alarm? You can go to this CloudWatch from here. From CloudWatch, you can create alarms. Okay, I'm not going to show you. That's part of the CloudWatch. We will be looking at that later. So logs and events. So it talks about what are the recent event happened, right? So database instance has been backed up at this time and DB instance has been created, right? So obviously if there's any more events, you'll be able to see those events here. And you can also create alarms, the CloudWatch alarm right from here in this console, right? Where you can choose to send notification to a SMS topic. Okay. I'll cancel this. I'm not going to create alarm. The alarms are going to cost you. For that reason, I'm just keeping it. But it's a very simple option, right? You can just create alarm. You send notification, send it to a new email or something, right? Choose your topic name, right? Any topic name you choose, and you check your metrics. And on average, you have a CPU utilization which goes above 90%, right? And then you create this alarm, right? Similarly, you can choose multiple options. But the free storage space is goes between less than something, you can check this as well. Okay. I'm not going to do this. I'll just let me go back here. This is my database. I looked at logs and events. Configuration. Remember the configurations what we did? Your database instance type, your parameter group, which is your default, right? And then you got instance class, storage, right? So you'll be able to see all this option here. Next tab is for maintenance and backups. Remember, there is automatic maintenance is enabled by default. And also you have a minor version upgrade. If there is any minor version upgrade, that is by default at this particular maintenance window will be done. Okay, the backup we remember taken for 7 days has been kept, has been enabled to copy the snapshot at any point of time. So that's about the database, right? So we all done, right? We created a single database. So one instance, because we are using a free tier account, but if you're using a production template, you'll be able to create a multi-AZ availability zone setup, where one more standby database will be created and the replication between them will be automatically created. All right, then. Let's look at a couple of more options in snapshot. Backup and snapshot is also we extensively checked. Okay, I'm going to delete the snapshot now before I proceed further. This was from the previous one. So now I have a database up and running. I want to take a manual snapshot. What I'll do is I click on take snapshot. When you click on take snapshot, it takes me to the take snapshot of console where I will choose an database instance which I want to take a backup on. I have only one instance up and running, which is DemoDB. So I'm going to take a snapshot. So I'm going to give a name to it, right? I'm going to give a name like a demo snapshot. Click on take snapshot. As you could see, the manual snapshot, right, at this time has been created by me. This is manual snapshot. So this is the automated snapshot. The first one is the manual snapshot. Okay. So here on the top, when I just created this database, just asking you to show the connection details. When I click on this one, it shows what is my master username and what is the master password and what is the endpoint to copy it. You can always use this to create your client to connect your databases. Okay. We just took a snapshot, remember? Let's refresh. It says still creating. They're still creating it. And all the snapshot also available here in this one. If you just left side, if you come on snapshot, just go to maintenance and backup, and it shows the snapshot over there. If you're using Aurora, for example, we'll be creating Aurora. We'll be able to see something called performance snapshot. We've not done that. We'll create Aurora database, and then we'll come back and see that option, right? So we have something called subnet groups. This is a single subnet, right? We can create a subnet group and add multiple subnet to this. I'm going to use a demo SN group. Choose a VPC, default one, and can see two availability zones, right? So 3, B, C. I'm adding all 3 over there. This is a subnet group, right? I'm creating multiple subnets. Okay, so I create a new subnet group. I choose what are the availability zones where I want to select my subnets. And I can see there is only 2 subnets I've created, which is 1A, 1B. I selected it. I can create my own subnet group. Okay, so this subnet group is something you can define and add when you want to give your database if you can deploy the database on this subnet group. If you have multiple availability zone setup, and this subnet groups will come into play where the instances will be spread across the different subnets, different availability zones at the end. Okay. So the third one, we need to understand. So parameter group is something we have already seen. So subnet group is allowing you to deploy this multi-AZ instances in multiple subnets, right? And third one is the option groups. Normally, along with the databases, you can also add additional softwares, to help you with. Let me just create an additional group, optional group, and show you. And you can specify that group while selecting the database. I'm creating an option group. Click on create option group. Name it as demo option group. Right? You went in. This is a test. This is the engine. It's a MySQL engine, right? In MySQL engine, it's the 8.1, right? This is the version which I'm using. Create this option group. I have this option group code created, right? For MySQL 8. Click on this option group. When I click on this option group, then I see this one add option, right? Go and click on add option. You could see the additional option that you can choose. So you can place an cache database in front, right? And memcache database in front, right? And with this parameters. Similarly, for different options, you'll see different software. So this is the one. Again, going back here, adding an option. For example, this time I'll delete this option group. I'll create one more. This time I'll create for another database. Okay. Let it come. So this again, demo 2. Yes. I choose something like an SQL Server SE, Enterprise Edition, engine version, say 15. Create option group. So this is a SQL Server, remember? This one, if I go back and add option, you can see different options, right? You remember SSIS, SSRS, and SSAS. Analytical services, integration services, and reporting services, right? They are additional softwares apart from your database engine. So if you are having any ETL engines, right, if you need to deploy and run it, you need to choose SSIS, right? In case of Cube, if you have analytics services running on a Cube, you have to use SSAS, right? For reporting services, you have to use SSRS. They are additional options. They are part of SQL Server, but they are additional options, right? Similarly, you can come here and specify these additional options, right? I just added this into additional option, right? So what you can do is when you are creating the database, you can also choose your option groups, and based on this, this can be reused to multiple server instances. Okay, so that's what is about option groups. The other important thing you just have to remember is reserved instances. So whatever we are running so far is called on-demand instances, because whenever you need it, you run that. Whenever you don't need it, you'll not be running it. But in a real production scenario, on-demand instances are really costly. right? To save money, we will go and purchase a reserved instance, but there is a rider. The reserved instances should have a minimum um, commitment for 1 year to 3 year time. Imagine that I want to choose a MySQL. I want to choose this particular instance. Anything, I'm just choosing one of it. I want a multi-availability zone. As you could see, they are looking for instance the minimum term of 1 year or 3 year contract, right? And see, I will be running the server for 3 years. If sure, I can do that. And I can say all upfront. I can pay all the money upfront to avail a discount, right? I can choose how many instances which I want to buy. I can continue, and it shows, right? One-time instance payment for 3 years would be 59,724 USD. Okay, so this is how you go and purchase instance. When you go for reserved instances, the charges will be cheaper. Okay, I'll cancel it. Now be doing this. This is how we do different database purchase options. Okay, so that's it. We just created our RDS instance. We did look up what are the snapshots available and how do I do automatic backup enabled to 7 days or 35 days. Then what's about the reserved instances, how they are helping to optimize the cost. Then we look at subnet groups, which is used to do a multi-AZ deployments, and the parameter groups for database settings, and option groups to add additional software required for the database. Okay. Just two more to complete. You remember the events which I showed you? Any database events are logged in events here. So if I come back here and it says in the entire RDS instance, these are my major events. Of recently, I create a snapshot, right? So not sorry, recent is for here. So the snapshot has been created and backup has been completed. Okay. So event subscription, these are the events, right? When anything happens on your RDS instances. If you want to subscribe to it, you have to use something called SNS topic, right? You can create an event subscription and choose to send it to a SNS topic. This SNS topic can actually go back and send an email for you, right? So anything to do with this clusters, I can send any detail email. So this is event subscription, events and event subscription. The subscription will allow you to send notification to email group or SMS or to another streaming services, all those things you can do. Right, that brings an end to our RDS instance creation.